The moment I walked into the conference room and saw his name listed under key personnel for interview, my breath locked in my chest. Marcus, my husband, well, nearly my ex-husband, though he still refused to sign the papers. The same man who once looked me dead in the eye and said, "You'll never belong in real business circles. You're just extra decoration." But the real jolt wasn't his name. It was the blinking notification at the top of my tablet. Urgent. Allegations of internal misconduct tied to senior manager Marcus Hale. My hands tightened around the device. That's when it hit me. I wasn't here as his wife. I wasn't here as the woman he'd belittled, laughed at, or betrayed. I was here as the lead compliance consultant, the one responsible for investigating the very violations tied to him. And he had no idea I was coming. I hadn't seen Marcus in months, not since the day I confronted him about the affair he thought he'd hidden so cleverly. The coworker, the late-night strategy sessions, the sudden deodorant in his glove compartment. I had the evidence, the screenshots, the timestamps, and when I laid it all out, expecting some mixture of shame or confession or even fear, all he did was laugh. Not a nervous laugh, a mocking one. You really think you can catch me doing something wrong?" he'd said. "Baby, you don't even understand my world. Stay out of business lanes. You're not built for them." I didn't cry, not in front of him. I simply walked away, each step heavier than the last, my pride dragging behind me like a torn hem. I didn't shout or break things. I didn't demand he respect me. That was the last day I fought for his validation. The months that followed were rebuilding, quiet, intense, lonely. I poured myself into certifications, late-night studying, networking calls, compliance audits, and 3 major consulting projects that shaped the reputation I now carried. Every step was deliberate, every small success a stitch repairing something he'd torn. And now here I was, assigned unknowingly to investigate his firm, his department, his misconduct. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even karma. It was competence meeting timing at the perfect intersection. Still, when I arrived, I expected professionalism from myself. Nothing more, nothing less. The elevator chimed at the 27th floor, and I walked out, heels tapping steadily against the polished tile. I held my shoulders high, my back straight, my face neutral. Inside, though, a current of heat pulsed beneath my ribs. Not anger, readiness. The receptionist glanced up. "Consultant Landry, they're expecting you in Conference B." I thanked her and headed down the hall. The room filled slowly with department heads, supervisors, legal counsel. I set up my laptop, placed the compliance binders neatly on the table, and adjusted the documents in front of me. Then a hush fell over the room. The door opened. Marcus stepped inside. He froze, completely, his confident stride cut short, his face drained one shade, then another. His eyes darted to the door, then back to me, the realization hitting him so fast he actually grabbed the back of a chair for balance. "Madeline?" he choked out. I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't offer a smile or a smirk. "Good morning," I said, my voice even, professional, unshakable. "Please take a seat. We're beginning shortly." He stared at me like he'd seen a ghost holding a clipboard. I turned back to my notes, flipping calmly through the pages. Facts, procedures, documentation, everything clean, everything in place. Then one of the senior executives leaned over and whispered to another, unaware I heard. "That's the lead consultant? She's impressive." Another answered quietly. "She's the one who cracked the Harper case. They say her reports are bulletproof." Marcus's jaw tensed. I felt his gaze burning into the side of my face, trying to decipher how I'd gotten here, how the woman he called irrelevant had become the authority in the room. The meeting began. I took control effortlessly, outlining timelines, expectations, data requests, confidentiality protocols. My voice didn't shake once. But when I opened the file marked Hail Marcus pending review, his face went stark white. I didn't look up, not until the director spoke firmly. Marcus, you'll report to Miss Landry for your internal interview. The air stilled. He swallowed hard. I finally lifted my eyes and met his. Cold professionalism. No bitterness, no history, nothing to comfort him. Mr. Hale, your session is scheduled for 3:15 p.m. I trust you'll be prepared. His lips parted slightly. He whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, Madeline, please. But I cut him off gently with the same tone he once used on me. This is business. Personal matters don't belong in this world. I'm sure you understand. The shock on his face was satisfying, yes, but beneath it, something darker stirred, something unstable, something I wasn't expecting. Because Marcus didn't just look surprised, he looked scared, and I had no idea why. Not yet. When the meeting adjourned, the room emptied in layers. Executives first, then legal, then department supervisors gathering their notes with stiff politeness. Everyone filed out, nodding to me with professional respect. Marcus remained seated, eyes lowered, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles turned pale. I didn't acknowledge him. I packed my laptop, sorted my binders, and reviewed the initial compliance logs. My mind was sharp, steady, aligned with my purpose, but the moment I stepped into the hallway, the air shifted. Marcus slipped out behind me and shut the conference room door with a quiet click. Madeline, he said, breath shallow, please, can we talk? I didn't bother pretending confusion. No. He flinched, the word hitting him harder than he expected. Just 5 minutes, This is a corporate investigation, I interrupted. Anything you need to say to me should go through formal channels. His jaw tightened. Damn, you really gonna treat me like some stranger? I turned to face him fully, my posture calm, my voice even. Marcus, you made yourself a stranger long before today. He blinked rapidly, swallowing hard. Look, I know I said things, I know I messed up, but you don't understand what's really happening here. I understand enough, I said, lifting the folder labeled Preliminary Violations, Hail Marcus, and the rest will come from documentation. His eyes widened. That's exactly why I'm trying to warn you. Warn me? I repeated. He lowered his voice. This ain't just an audit, Madeline. Somebody's setting me up. I exhaled, tired already. Marcus, evidence doesn't set you up. Paper trails don't materialize out of nowhere. Policy breaches come from actions, not ghosts. He ran a hand over his face, voice cracking. You think I'd risk my career like this? You think I'd just start funneling expenses to... I stopped walking. That one word, funneling, too specific for someone innocent, but I kept my face unreadable. Your interview is at 3:15. Save it for then. His breath hitched. Madeline, please, they're going to throw me under the bus. They're using you. And you used me, I said quietly, months ago, remember? He winced. That was different. No, Marcus, I said, holding his gaze firmly. It wasn't. He opened his mouth to respond, but a tall woman in dark slacks approached briskly, HR director. Miss Laundrie, conference room C is ready for your next session. I nodded and stepped past Marcus. He didn't follow, didn't speak, just stood there, shoulders sagging under the weight of something I sensed but couldn't yet name. By noon, I had already reviewed 32 internal emails, skimmed the expense reports, and conducted 2 mid-level interviews. Patterns were emerging, patterns that pointed clearly toward Marcus. Unauthorized client charges, personal expenses labeled as project costs, misreported travel reimbursements. It wasn't sloppy, but it wasn't genius either. Yet something didn't add up. The timestamps were too perfect, the approvals too seamless. Someone either coached him or covered for him just long enough to let him fall. I typed notes, cross-referenced logs, and kept my expression neutral as the next employee walked in. Every account led back to Marcus, sometimes directly, sometimes through convenient coincidence. Was Mr. Hale aware of these policies? I asked a junior analyst nervously. Yes, she said. He trained all of us. He emphasized compliance, actually. Interesting. And did anything change recently? She hesitated. People started avoiding him. Avoiding? She nodded. Meetings would get canceled when he walked in, people whispered when he left, and his coworker, the one he was close to, she transferred departments suddenly. My chest tightened slightly. She initiated the transfer? Yes, quietly, and right after that, the senior partners began reviewing Marcus's division. So the affair wasn't just personal mess, it sat in the center of a political storm. The analyst exhaled. Everyone said something was coming. Something was coming, and I was standing in the middle of it. At 3:10 p.m., I straightened my papers, centered my pen, and prepared for Marcus's interview. Professional, controlled, detached. The door opened at 3:15 sharp. Marcus walked in slower than usual. His confident stride was gone, replaced with a weighted shuffle. He looked smaller somehow, like the edges of his identity were unraveling. He sat across from me, no ring, no bravado, no smirk, just a man afraid of being seen clearly for the first time. I hit the record button. This is the formal interview of Marcus Hale. For accuracy, please state your name and position. He swallowed. Marcus Hale, Senior Manager, Client Accounts. Thank you. I kept my voice steady. Mr. Hale, we'll begin with expense discrepancies flagged in your department. For the next hour, I asked question after question, every one grounded in documentation. He answered some, denied others, deflected a few. But as the evidence tightened, his shoulders sank lower and lower. Then I slid forward the email thread between him and the coworker, the affair partner, but not about the affair, about expense approvals, codes, timing. He froze. His voice cracked. Madeline, please, don't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, I said calmly. I'm documenting facts. No, you don't understand. His breathing quickened. She wasn't just my coworker. She showed me how to shift things around. I thought she had clearance. Did she? I asked. He closed his eyes. No. Did she ask you to manipulate these entries? Yes. Did she threaten you if you didn't? Yes. I sat back slowly. There it was, the missing piece. He wasn't innocent, but he wasn't the mastermind either. Before I could craft my next question, Marcus's voice cracked again. They're setting me up to be the fall guy, he whispered. And if you dig further, you're going to find her fingerprints everywhere. He leaned forward, eyes wide with desperate warning. Madeline, if you keep pulling, you're going to expose something bigger than me, something they don't want you touching. My heart thudded, slow, heavy. And when that happens, he swallowed hard, they're not going to come from me. I stared at him, my pulse tightening. For a moment, the entire room felt smaller, like the air itself leaned in to hear what Marcus had just said. They're going to come for you. I kept my face neutral, no flinch, no reaction, but inside, something cold trickled down my spine. We're going to stay focused on documented facts, I replied, steady and professional. Your obligations, your approvals, your actions. Marcus shook his head sharply. Madeline, stop pretending this is just paperwork. You don't know these people. And you do? I countered. He hesitated. His lips parted, closed, parted again. Confession hovered, but fear restrained it like an invisible leash. Finally, he whispered, I know enough to know you shouldn't be the one leading this. I sat up straighter. I was assigned because of my credentials. No, he said, voice breaking. You were assigned because someone wants me gone, and they think you're the perfect weapon to do it. The words struck something deep in me, a spark of anger mixed with disbelief. I had fought for every ounce of professional respect I carried, every certification, every contract, every late-night study session, and now he wanted to twist my competence into someone else's agenda? Still, I didn't respond emotionally. I clicked my pen and continued. Mr. Hale, let's return to the expense reports. I'm not safe, Madeline, he snapped. And that's a matter for your internal leadership and legal team, not for this interview. It involves you, he pressed, leaning forward desperately, because when this blows up, they won't protect you either. You'll be disposable, just like me. My gaze hardened. The only thing at risk today is the truth. Now continue. Something flickered in his eyes, anger maybe, or surrender. A dry laugh escaped him. You really don't get it. No, I said, I just don't fear the consequences of doing the right thing. He stared at me for a long, heavy moment. Then he looked down at his hands, shaking slightly. Ask what you need to ask. Let's get it over with. For another 42 minutes, I questioned him methodically. Each time I presented evidence, an approval, an email, a timestamp, his story unraveled further. It became clear he'd followed someone else's lead, the coworker, the affair partner, and possibly someone above her. But there was more, something he wasn't saying, something he kept swallowing down every time I got too close. When the interview ended, he didn't move, didn't stand, didn't gather his notes. He just sat there staring at the table. Madeline, his voice was barely audible. Do you hate me? I paused with my hand on the stop record button. This isn't about emotions. It is to me. I straightened slowly. Hate isn't what I feel. He looked up, surprised. If anything, I feel distance, like you're not someone I ever really knew. His expression twisted, pain and guilt merging into something unsteady. I'm sorry for the affair, for how I talked to you, for how I treated your work. You didn't deserve that. Apologies won't change your choices, but they're noted. He nodded weakly, accepting the professionalism in my tone even as it stung. Will you tell them I cooperated? If asked, I will answer truthfully. Before he could respond, a knock cut through the silence. One of the senior partners opened the door. Ms. Landry, we need you in the executive boardroom. I gathered my files. Understood. Marcus's eyes widened. They want you? Already? That means they're moving fast. I didn't look back. I have work to do. But as I stepped into the hallway, he grabbed the edge of the table and forced himself to stand. Madeline, he called out. I turned, just enough to acknowledge him, but not enough to invite closeness. Be careful, he whispered. You don't know who you're dealing with. His voice cracked with sincerity, not manipulation, not guilt, genuine fear. Before I could question him, a woman from HR touched my arm lightly. They're waiting for you, and they want you to bring your preliminary findings. My heart thudded once, hard. Already? I walked toward the boardroom, papers tucked neatly under my arm, every step controlled. But inside, unease curled tighter with each stride. When I entered the room, the atmosphere was electric. Executives seated stiffly, legal counsel present, the door closing behind me with a soft but final thud. The CEO sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Ms. Landry, he gestured to the empty seat beside him, we reviewed the preliminary data you submitted. We require your insight on something delicate. I didn't show surprise. Of course. He slid a folder toward me. When I opened it, my stomach tightened. It wasn't about Marcus, not anymore. It was about someone much higher in the company, someone with whose signature appeared on documents that should never have crossed their desk. someone with power, influence, reach. And the last entry in the folder, the one highlighted for review, was circled in red. Executive override approved by M.H. Marcus's initials. But the timestamp placed him in another city entirely at the time of approval, which meant one thing. Someone was forging his identity, using him, using my investigation. And worse, the forged approval matched a signature they now suspected belonged to someone sitting in this very room. My pulse hammered, because suddenly Marcus's warning sounded like the truth. The room felt colder the moment I closed that folder. Not physically. Corporate offices always ran a touch too warm, but something in the air shifted, tightening, like the walls leaned in to listen. The CEO's gaze weighed on me as I scrolled slowly through the forged approvals, every line sharper than the last. "You recognize the pattern, yes?" he asked. I kept my voice steady. Yes, the overrides attributed to Mr. Hale weren't executed by him. The timestamps confirm he wasn't present, and the digital signatures show inconsistencies. A quiet murmur rippled around the table. Some executives exchanged stiff glances. Others kept their faces blank, too trained to show discomfort. The CFO leaned forward, fingers knotted. "Ms. Laundrie, your analysis suggests intentional manipulation within senior leadership. That's significant." Significant was corporate speak for explosive. I nodded. "I'll need to review system access logs, administrative permissions, and internal correspondence from the last 6 months." "That won't be easy," the COO said with a strained laugh. "Executive-level data is sensitive." I looked him directly in the eyes. "Which is why you hired an external consultant. Independence is the safeguard." A silent challenge settled between us. Then the CEO cleared his throat. "Ms. Laundrie, for the sake of transparency, we need to know, at this point, do you believe Marcus Hale intentionally engaged in misconduct?" The room held its breath. Every executive leaned forward, waiting to hear whether the scapegoat they'd quietly agreed upon was still viable. I didn't rush. "I believe," I said slowly, "that Mr. Hale's actions reflect both negligence and influence, but not sole responsibility, not even primary responsibility." The COO flinched. The CFO let out a breath she must have been holding. The CEO nodded once, face unreadable. "And in your professional opinion," he continued, "is he being targeted?" "Yes," I said plainly. "The documents indicate as much." Another ripple of agitation. And then something I didn't expect. The CEO leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Finish your review, Miss Laundrie. Leave no stone unturned, and proceed carefully." It wasn't a warning. It was a plea. When I left the boardroom, my heels echoed down the hallway, each step pounding like a heartbeat. My tablet buzzed as emails poured in, new data approvals, access permissions, message alerts from legal, all urgent, all time-stamped within minutes of the meeting. Someone wanted me fully inside the investigation. Someone else would want me out. As I approached the break lounge to collect a bottle of water, I noticed Marcus leaning against the far wall, eyes locked on me. His posture sagged, his shirt wrinkled, his tie crooked, nothing like the polished man he once portrayed. He pushed off the wall slowly. "They called you in, didn't they?" "Yes." His voice dropped. "And they showed you something." I didn't answer him, not here, but the silence told him everything. He exhaled shakily. "I tried to warn you." "You tried to save yourself," I corrected. "Whatever warnings came with it were incidental." His jaw tightened. "Believe what you want, but you need to be careful, Madeline. This is bigger than my affair, bigger than some manipulated expense logs. Someone's been building a case around me for months." "And you didn't notice?" "I noticed enough to be scared," he whispered. I stared at him, searching for truth in his eyes. For the first time in years, maybe ever, he wasn't arrogant. He wasn't slick. He wasn't calculating. He was scared. A genuine fear that sat deep in his posture. "Tell me everything," I said quietly. He shook his head. "I can't." "You can't or you won't." His throat bobbed. "Both." Before I could press further, footsteps approached. This time, a woman in a tailored charcoal suit, the head of internal legal, stepped into the lounge. "Miss Laundrie, we've unlocked the executive-level server for your review. You may begin analyzing the data immediately." Marcus stepped back like she was made of fire. I thanked her and followed her down the hall to the secure room. She scanned her ID badge, keyed in a code, and motioned for me to enter. Inside, the room hummed with controlled air circulation and the low whir of server access terminals. A screen in the center already displayed an alert. "Unusual login attempts. Flagged account. MH. Time-stamped yesterday, 3:14 a.m. The exact hour Marcus was out of town. "Someone is actively using his credentials," I murmured. "Or trying to," the legal head replied. My stomach tightened. "Who else has override access?" She hesitated. "Only 3 executives." She listed them. COO, CIO, CFO. 3 powerful individuals, 3 people with everything to lose if misconduct surfaced. I clicked into the network repository, scanning through thousands of email threads. Most were routine, reports, approvals, project updates. But then, a series of messages marked confidential, high priority. Sender, CIO. Recipients, COO, CFO. Subject, containment strategy. My blood chilled. I opened the thread, only to find the entire body replaced with access restricted, unauthorized view logged. A new window popped up instantly. Notification sent to administrator. I froze. Someone knew I tried to open it. Someone was watching the system in real time, and as the realization hit me, the lights above me flickered once, twice, and the screen suddenly logged me out with a final message: "Session terminated by administrator." I stood slowly, pulse pounding. Outside the door, footsteps approached again, but these were heavier, slower, purposeful. Not the legal head returning, not a colleague, someone else, someone who didn't want me inside that file. The doorknob shifted, turned, then stopped. Whoever was on the other side wasn't entering. They were listening, waiting, breathing, and for the first time since this investigation began, a sliver of fear pierced my professionalism, because I knew then this wasn't misconduct, this wasn't policy violation, this was a cover-up, a deliberate, careful, dangerous cover-up, and I had just touched the edge of it. The doorknob didn't turn again. It stayed still, just slightly off-center, like whoever touched it stopped mid-motion. The air in the secure room thickened with quiet tension. My pulse thudded in my ears, and every instinct urged me not to move, not to breathe, not to reveal I'd noticed. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Then the footsteps retreated. Slow, deliberate, unhurried, as if they wanted me to know someone had been there, as if intimidation was just another step in their process. I exhaled carefully, unclenching my fists. This wasn't the kind of fear Marcus had tried to pin on me. This wasn't emotional. It wasn't relational. It was procedural, engineered. Whoever was pulling strings didn't panic easily. They had authority, comfort, and confidence in the shadows they hid behind. I logged back into the workstation knowing the system would timestamp my effort. But when I typed my credentials, a red banner flashed across the screen. Access suspended. Contact admin. They locked me out. 5 minutes after showing executives my preliminary findings, 3 minutes after touching their confidential thread, 1 minute after someone approached that door. This was no coincidence. I shut down the terminal, gathered my folders, and stepped into the hallway. A pair of employees walked past, chatting casually about a client call. They had no idea what was unfolding behind these walls. But one person did. Turning the corner, I saw Marcus waiting near the stairwell, eyes restless, pacing in tight circles. When he spotted me, he hurried over. "What happened?" he whispered harshly. "You went into the executive server, didn't you?" I didn't answer. "Madeline, please, tell me." His desperation grated me, but something in the way he scanned the hallway, watching every passing shadow, told me his fear wasn't performative. "You said someone was setting you up. Who?" His throat tightened. "I told you, I can't say." "You keep saying can't. Why? What's stopping you?" He took a shaky breath. "Because they're listening. Everything here is monitored. Every keystroke, every file, every room." I felt my skin tighten. "Then why talk to me at all?" "Because you're the only person they wouldn't expect me to warn. They think we hate each other. They think you wouldn't listen." "I don't hate you," I said softly. "I'm disappointed, and I've outgrown you. But hate? No." Something broke across his face, shame mixed with gratitude. "Look," he said urgently, "if they saw you try to open something restricted, they'll—" He stopped. His eyes flicked to something behind me. I turned. The CIO, the man whose name was on that restricted thread, strode down the hallway toward us. Tall, composed, silver tie perfectly centered, the kind of calm only found in people accustomed to control. "Mr. Hale," he said coolly, "you're needed in my office." Marcus stiffened. "For what?" "For a follow-up regarding your interview." His lips parted with confusion. "But my interview was with Miss Landry, yes," the CIO said, glancing at me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "And now with leadership." Marcus swallowed hard. I felt him tremble. "Let's not waste time," the CIO said. "Leadership is very interested in your cooperation." Marcus didn't move. The CIO's smile thinned. "Now, Marcus." He finally nodded, stepping past me, eyes flicking once, like a silent plea. "Miss Landry," the CIO said, shifting his attention to me. "A moment?" I held my folder tighter. "Of course." He stepped closer, too close for corporate politeness, and lowered his voice. "In the future, please avoid attempting to access executive-level correspondence without proper clearance." I used the credentials provided to me. I replied evenly. "Yes, and your attempt was logged. The system escalates unauthorized access attempts to my desk immediately." There it was. He knew the moment I clicked, and he came looking for me. "I assume you understand the sensitivity involved," he continued. "We wouldn't want this investigation to become unnecessarily complicated." He smiled again, but it was sharper this time, cold, calculated. "Your work has been impressive, I'd add, but be careful which doors you open. Some aren't meant for you." My heart thudded. "Are you threatening me?" He chuckled. "Of course not. Just offering guidance. You're talented, Miss Landry. It would be a shame to see that talent misapplied." Before I could respond, he turned and walked away, his shoes tapping a steady rhythm down the hall. When he disappeared around the corner, I exhaled. Marcus's warning wasn't paranoia. The restricted files weren't accidental, and the CIO wasn't just involved. He was orchestrating the cover-up. I returned to my temporary office and shut the door, making sure the lock clicked. My hands trembled slightly as I set my folder down. I didn't like feeling watched, controlled, guided into a narrative someone else crafted. But most of all, I didn't like being underestimated. Just as I powered up my laptop to strategize my next move, a new email notification popped up. No subject, no sender. The body contained one line. "If you continue this, something will happen that you cannot undo." No signature, no traceable header. My breath caught. Below the line was an attachment labeled Hale Confidential PDF. My finger hovered over the trackpad. If I opened it, I would step deeper into something very dangerous. If I didn't, I'd be blind in a battle someone else already started. I clicked. The document opened slowly, pixels rendering one chilling sentence at a time. "We know why you're really here." The next page loaded. My heart slammed into my ribs as a photo appeared. A picture of me entering the building that morning, time-stamped, tagged. And below it, "You're not just investigating us, we're investigating you." The screen flickered, then went black. For a long moment, I just sat there staring at the black screen. My pulse throbbed inside my ears, steady as a metronome, but everything else felt suspended, like time had paused to watch what I'd do next. They weren't just threatening me. They were tracking me, watching me, profiling me. And the worst part? They were confident enough to say it out loud. I closed my laptop slowly, not slamming it, not reacting the way they probably wanted me to. Instead, I breathed, deep, quiet, controlled. The same breath I'd taken the night Marcus told me I'd never belong in his world. The same breath I took when I walked away and rebuilt my credibility from scratch. Fear wasn't new to me. Underestimation wasn't new to me. But surveillance? That was a different animal. I reached for my phone instinctively, then stopped. If they were tracking my laptop, they were probably monitoring my Wi-Fi, my badge entry, and possibly even my phone signal. So instead, I stood, grabbed my folder, and walked out of the office as if nothing had happened. That was my power. Not panic, precision. The hallway was quiet, too quiet. People avoided eye contact. Paper shuffled nervously. Conversations whispered. It didn't take a trained ear to feel tension thickening the air like humidity before a storm. When I reached the elevator, I pressed the button. A soft chime echoed, and the doors slid open, revealing someone I least expected. Marcus. He looked rattled. His tie hung loose, his eyes bloodshot, his breath shallow. "Madeline," he whispered, stepping out. "They confronted me." "Who?" He glanced around the empty hall. "The executives, not all of them, the CIO, the COO, and," he swallowed hard, "and someone else I didn't recognize. They said I needed to sign a statement taking responsibility for everything." "And did you sign it?" He shook his head furiously. "No, I refused, but they kept asking, and when I didn't break, they said," his voice cracked, "they said if I don't cooperate, I won't be the only one who loses everything." My stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" He looked into my eyes, pain and fear mixing like oil and water. "They mentioned your name." I froze. "My name?" "Yes," he said. "They said your wife already stepped out of her lane once. She shouldn't be doing it again." I clenched my jaw. "We're not even married anymore." "They don't care about legal status," he murmured. "To them, you're leverage, a pressure point." I hated the truth in that. "Marcus," I said quietly, "tell me who the third person was." He ran a hand through his hair. Tall, mixed race, expensive suit, no name tag, didn't speak at first, just watched. And when he finally spoke, Marcus's voice dropped. "He said you were the biggest threat to their operation." I stared at him. "Operation?" Marcus's breath stuttered. "Madeline, the woman he broke off, shame pulling his eyes away. "The coworker, the affair, she wasn't just a fling. She's connected to someone up top, someone who has been using her to get information from various departments." A sick heaviness settled in my chest. "You're telling me she wasn't just sleeping with you?" She was manipulating me, positioning me, guiding my approvals, coaching me on loopholes. And I thought she liked me, but I was just the idiot who gave access without asking why. This was bigger than adultery, bigger than office misconduct. This was corporate espionage. Before I could respond, the elevator behind us chimed again and the door slid open. Officer Brooks, security chief for the company, stepped out. Broad shoulders, dark suit, hard stare. "Miss Landry," he said, voice flat, "leadership requests your presence in the 31st floor briefing room." Marcus stiffened. No, don't go with him." Brooks raised an eyebrow. "Is that a refusal, Miss Landry?" I met his eyes evenly. I wasn't aware of any scheduled briefing. "It's an urgent matter. They asked for you immediately." Marcus grabbed my arm. "Madeline, listen to me. Do not go up there alone, please." Brooks's gaze darkened. "Remove your hand from her, Mr. Hale." Marcus didn't move. "Now," Brooks said, stepping forward, "or I will escalate this." Marcus dropped his hand, but not his urgency. "Madeline, whisper. They don't want you up there for a briefing. They want you out of the way." Brooks's jaw clenched. "That's enough." I stepped between them. "Gentlemen," I said calmly, "I'll go to the briefing." Marcus shook his head violently. "Madeline, think." But I looked at him, then at Brooks, and made a decision. "Mr. Brooks," I said evenly, "I'll follow you, but I need a moment to retrieve my additional notes." He paused, suspicious. 2 minutes. Understood. He walked toward the elevator, watching me carefully. Marcus leaned in close, voice trembling. "If you walk in that room, you may not walk back out." I looked toward the elevator where Brooks waited like a bouncer guarding the gates of hell, then back at Marcus. And for the first time, I felt the weight of being truly hunted. "Marcus," I murmured, "tell me the truth. How far will they go to protect themselves?" His answer was instant. "As far as they have to." We locked eyes, fear threading between us like a wire pulled tight. And somewhere deep inside me, a single truth settled. This wasn't just a cover-up. It was a trap, and I had just stepped on the trigger. I didn't rush back to my temporary office. I walked slowly, deliberately, keeping my breathing even while my mind worked at lightning speed. If Brooks was truly escorting me to a briefing, he would have been more relaxed, more corporate, but he wasn't. His posture was rigid, his tone clipped, his eyes too focused. They wanted me isolated, contained, removed. The question was whether they planned to remove me professionally or physically. Inside my office, I closed the door, letting it latch softly behind me. I ignored my laptop, still dark, still compromised, and reached instead for my phone. But before I could power it down or shield it, a soft knock tapped at the door. Once, pause, twice. Marcus's signal from years ago, back when our marriage still felt like partnership instead of prison. I cracked the door open. He slipped inside instantly, eyes bouncing around a room like he expected someone to leap out of the vents. "They're moving fast," he whispered. "Too fast. You shouldn't go upstairs." "I know." He looked at me, startled. "Then why'd you say yes to Brooks?" "Because refusal would confirm I know something." Marcus swallowed. "You do know something." "Yes, enough to realize this goes beyond policy breaches." He dragged both hands through his hair. "Madeline, you don't understand. They've been running something here for years, something that funnels money through the accounts department, and when I got too close, because of her, they shifted everything onto my access. And you went along with it," I said bluntly. Hurt flashed across his face, but he didn't deny it. I continued. "This executive override, it wasn't forged just to frame you. It was forged because someone needed your level of access." "Exactly," he said. "And now they want me silent, and they want you gone, or discredited, or both." I leaned against the desk, mind racing. "I need you to be honest with me. Did you ever see anything off? Anything that didn't match corporate workflow?" He hesitated. "Marcus," I pressed. He exhaled sharply. "The woman I was seeing, she mentioned a special account, something coded as E6. I never saw it, but she said only 2 executives handled it, and if it ever came up in an audit," he met my eyes. Burn it. My heart dropped. Burn it. Destroy evidence. Erase accountability. But why? Before I could ask, my office phone rang, slicing the room in half with its sharp, sterile ringtone. Marcus jumped. "Don't answer that." I stared at the blinking light. Line 2, internal call, no caller ID. Someone inside the building. Someone watching whether I'd pick up. The phone rang again. My hand hovered over the receiver, not touching it. "Madeline," Marcus whispered urgently, "don't!" But I did. Slowly, deliberately, I lifted it to my ear. A pause. A faint sound like someone breathing too close to the receiver. Then a voice, low and controlled, said, "If you walk into that 31st floor briefing, you won't be walking out. Redirect your loyalty now." My stomach tightened. "Who is this?" I said, voice even. No answer. Just another breath, cold and too calm. "Choose wisely. Your daughter doesn't deserve collateral damage." Ice shot through my spine. My daughter? I felt my grip tighten so hard my knuckles whitened. "You stay away from her." A short, quiet chuckle filtered through the line. "Then stay away from us." The call clicked off. I lowered the receiver slowly, aware my hands were shaking despite my controlled breathing. Marcus watched me, eyes widening. "They threatened Maya?" I didn't answer, because I couldn't. The fear that settled over me wasn't corporate fear. It was primal, a mother's dread. "They're watching," he whispered. "You need to get out of this building." Leaving now would be a confession, and they'd follow me. Marcus paced the room like a trapped animal. "What do you need me to do? Tell me, I'll do anything. Just don't face them alone." I stared at him, really stared at him, and something painful tightened in my chest, because I could see it clearly now. This wasn't the arrogant, dismissive man who once mocked my ambition. This was a man terrified of the consequences of his own naivety, a man who realized too late that his mistress wasn't an affair. She was an operative. "Marcus," I said gently, "do you trust me?" He blinked, surprised. "Yes, more than anyone here." "Then you need to do exactly as I say." He nodded desperately. "I'm going to send you to the briefing room." He froze. "What? Madeline, they want me to sign a confession." "I know. Let them try." "What about you?" "I'm not going to the briefing." He stared at me, horrified. "Then what are you going to do?" I pulled my badge off my belt, examining it. "I'm going somewhere they're not expecting." "Where?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice until it was a whisper. "To the one place they can't monitor." He frowned. "Where is that?" I met his eyes. "To the digital archive vault, the offline storage." His breath caught. "They keep the E6 files in there." "I know. And if you access them, they'll know," I finished. We stood there in the heavy electric silence of shared danger. Then Marcus's eyes widened suddenly, a flicker of fear blooming. "Madeline, look behind you!" I turned slowly. The CCTV camera above my office door, usually static, had its lens pointed directly at me. A red light blinked. Recording, watching, listening. And in that instant, I understood. They weren't waiting for me to come to the 31st floor briefing. They were waiting for me to make my next move. That blinking red light above my door felt louder than any siren. It wasn't just recording, it was observing, analyzing, waiting for proof that I was stepping out of line. The CIO's warning echoed in my mind like a drumbeat. Be careful which doors you open. Some aren't meant for you. But I'd already opened the wrong one, and now, the right one. Marcus's voice quivered. "Madeline, they're watching us right now." I didn't look up at the camera. That would signal awareness. Instead, I moved with the controlled grace of someone rearranging a stack of papers, sliding my binder in front of me like it contained nothing more than meeting notes. "Sit down," I murmured softly. "What?" "Sit," I repeated through a tight smile, as if we were having a harmless discussion about scheduling. He sat, visibly shaking. I spoke louder, projecting a neutral tone for anyone listening. Marcus, let's go over your initial statement again. We need clarity on your expense approvals. His eyes widened in confusion, then understanding, then admiration mixed with fear. He nodded stiffly. Yes, clarity. Right. We played roles. I asked bland questions, he gave bland answers. If anyone was listening, it would sound like I was preparing follow-up documentation for his case. Nothing more, nothing alarming. Meanwhile, my mind raced. The digital archive vault. Offline records, no wireless, no remote surveillance, no executive override. It was the one place in the building they couldn't monitor in real time, and the fact that such a place existed meant they had something to hide, something physical, something raw, something not meant to be searchable or deletable. But I'd only get one chance to reach it. A single mistake, and I'd end up like Marcus, cornered, coerced, stripped of protections. Or worse. I stood, closing the binder. Thank you. I have what I need. Marcus blinked. That's it? For now. He followed my lead, standing slowly. I lowered my voice to a whisper that wouldn't be caught unless the camera had directional audio. When Brooks comes back, you let him escort you. Don't resist. His breath hitched. And you? I lifted my folder, tucking it under my arm like any other compliance consultant preparing for her next meeting. I'm going to take the long way to the elevator. You walk ahead, don't look back. Marcus swallowed hard, then nodded. Madeline, don't get hurt because of me. I met his eyes, really saw the remorse glistening there. Marcus, you didn't create this mess. You were just foolish enough to get used. A tear slipped down his cheek before he turned away. The door opened. Brooks appeared with that stiff, neutral expression. Mr. Hale, leadership is waiting. Marcus glanced once at me, microscopic in gesture. Then he walked toward Brooks and disappeared into the hallway. I waited 5 long seconds, then stepped out in the opposite direction. The corridor stretched silent, empty but humming with the faint tension of corporate espionage. I pretended to scroll through my tablet, eyes scanning the reflection on its glass to check for shadows behind me. None. Good. 2 left turns, 1 right, past the elevators, past the meeting rooms, past the executive wing, until I reached the quietest part of the building, the archive floor. The door to the vault was unmarked, tucked behind a row of storage lockers designed to look boring, intentionally so employees got lost before noticing it. But I'd studied floor plans. I knew the blueprint of this building better than half the leadership team. I approached the security keypad, heart pounding. My badge hovered an inch from the scanner. The moment I tapped in, a timestamp would be created. Someone monitoring would notice. But they expected me in the 31st floor briefing room, not the basement-level archive. That mismatch might give me minutes, maybe seconds. My badge beeped softly. The lock clicked open. I slipped inside. Darkness swallowed me instantly, thick and cool like a vault should be. Only the soft hum of air filtering through old climate controls broke the silence. I flicked the chain on a small industrial bulb overhead. It glowed dim yellow, revealing rows of metal shelves lined with boxes, file binders, and sealed envelopes. This wasn't digital data. This was physical evidence, protected from deletion, protected from remote access, protected from manipulation, which meant the truth lived here. I moved deeper, scanning labels. Archive C, expense histories. Archive F, legal complaints, unresolved. Archive K, executive overrides. My heart hammered. There, the shelf I needed. Archive E6, do not remove, executor access only. A steel box sat on the shelf, heavy and padlocked. I ran my fingers across the metal. This was it. This was what they didn't want me to see. Behind me, the vault door clicked. Not open, locked. Someone had triggered the override. My breath froze. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, approaching the vault room from the outside. A shadow moved under the doorway, barely visible through the narrow bottom gap. Someone was standing right outside, waiting, listening. And then, in a chilling, calm voice muffled through the steel door, someone spoke. "Miss Landry, step away from the E6 box." My blood iced. They knew exactly where I was, exactly what I came for, exactly what I'd touched. I backed up slowly, the steel box still in my hands. "I said step away," the voice repeated, firmer this time. And that's when I recognized it. The CIO, calm, controlled, too confident. But what he said next chilled me deeper than the locked vault door. "Miss Landry, we're not here to stop the investigation. We're here to stop you." The lights flickered overhead, then went black. The darkness inside the vault was absolute, thick, suffocating, swallowing every outline and shadow. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, loud enough that I feared the CIO could hear it through the steel door. I didn't move, didn't breathe, did nothing that could reveal my position inside the pitch-black room. Then came the sound, a soft metallic click, followed by a low, grinding hum that vibrated through the floor. He was initiating the secondary lockdown. Vault rooms in high-clearance corporate buildings weren't just locked, they were sealed, airflow cut, communications blocked, doors reinforced with internal bolts that no badge could override from inside. If the sealing completed, I wouldn't be able to get out. I swallowed slowly, controlling my fear. Not for myself, fear I could manage, but for Maya. Her face flashed through my mind, her eyes bright and innocent, the voice on the phone threatening her, the way they spoke my daughter's name like she was a chess piece, not a child. No, I would not be another woman silenced into disappearing. I stepped backward carefully until my hand brushed cold metal, the E6 box, still locked, still heavy. Outside, the CIO's voice came again, muffled through the steel, but unmistakably calm. "Miss Landry, you're intelligent. You know you've put yourself in an irreversible position." I didn't respond. "You accessed restricted data, attempted to open confidential transcripts, and entered an unauthorized archive. You've left a trail we can present in any narrative we choose." He paused, letting the threat sink under my skin. "You can walk out of this building with your reputation intact, but only if you leave that box where it belongs." I closed my eyes briefly. There it was, the offer of silence, the deal meant to muzzle, not protect. They wanted me to give up the one piece of evidence that could expose everything: embezzlement, executive conspiracy, abuse of power, political funneling. I'd spent years being underestimated, dismissed, mocked by a man who said I'd never belong in his world. Now I stood inside the world he bragged about, and I was tearing it apart from the inside. The lockdown hummed louder. A mechanical voice, faint but audible inside the vault, announced, "Seal in progress, 40%. My time was running out. I moved my hand slowly across the front of the box, searching its edges, its undercarriage, the sides, every area where a hidden lock mechanism might be. My fingers found a small groove. I pressed lightly. Nothing. Then something shifted, barely. A latch? Before I could try again, the CIO spoke louder. "Miss Landry, do not force the box. You do not understand the consequences of accessing privileged executive documentation." He paused, and his next words dropped like stones. "This is your final warning." Another mechanical announcement echoed through the dark. "Seal in progress, 60%. My breath tightened. I needed light. I needed time. I needed a way out. But most of all, I needed to outthink them. I crouched low, feeling along the floor until my hand brushed the base of a shelving unit. The industrial bulb overhead was dead, but the emergency strip lighting along the bottom edge of the shelves, if I could pry it loose, it might give me seconds of visibility. I slipped my fingers under the strip and tugged. It resisted. I pulled harder. It snapped free with a faint crackle, a tiny glow flickering to life like a dying flashlight. Just enough illumination for me to see a tiny combination lock on the back of the E6 box. Handwritten, not mechanical. Something improvised by someone who didn't trust digital security. My pulse jumped. Whoever hid this box didn't trust the system. They feared the same people I now feared. The CIO's voice returned, sharper. "Miss Landry, step away from the evidence." But there was something new in his tone now. Not arrogance, not control. Urgency. He didn't want me opening this box, not just for the company's sake, but for his. "Seal in progress, 75%. I scrambled to rotate the dim strip of light toward the combination lock. Numbers appeared faintly. 1, 9, 3, 4. A year? A code? A date? My mind raced. Not random, not complex, something personal. I whispered to myself, 1934. Maybe 19 and 34, maybe. Then it hit me. Employee ID numbers for top executives all started with a 2-digit prefix representing their position level, and the CIO's badge, when he pressed it to the scanner earlier in the meeting, flashed briefly LV 19-034. My heart slammed against my ribs. This wasn't the company's secret. This was his. The box began to slide open. Outside, the CIO pounded on the door, voice finally cracking. "Madeline, stop! Do not open that box!" I ignored him. "Seal in progress, 98%. I grabbed the top folder and stuffed it inside my blazer. The lights overhead flickered again. The vault began to hiss as the locking bolt slid into place. The CIO shouted one last time, voice cracking with panic, "Do not close that box!" But it was too late. The vault sealed. Total darkness. And for the first time in this investigation, I realized the CIO wasn't trying to intimidate me. He was trying to keep me alive. Because someone even worse was coming. The vault sealed with a heavy metallic thunk. Deep, final, suffocating. A sound that didn't just echo through the room, but through my bones. The emergency lighting strip in my hand flickered weakly, casting a pale glow that reached barely a foot in any direction. Beyond that, pitch black. I forced myself to breathe slowly. Panic was exactly what they wanted. Disorientation, isolation, compliance. But I'd survived being dismissed, belittled, cheated on, lied to, and underestimated. I'd rebuilt everything they said I wasn't capable of. Darkness didn't frighten me. People did, especially the kind who ran companies like chessboards. Outside the steel door, there was silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of someone listening, waiting, calculating. Then, faint but unmistakable, another voice joined the CIO, a voice I'd never heard before. A man, smooth, unhurried, someone who entered rooms only when the outcome was already decided. "Is she inside?" the man asked. "Yes," the CIO replied. His voice was strained, anxious, so unlike his usual self-assured tone. "And she opened it?" A pause. I imagined the CIO's jaw tightening. "Yes." The man let out a low hum. "Then the situation has escalated." "What do we do?" the CIO asked, sounding afraid, not for himself, for me. We follow protocol, the man said simply. The vault will filter fresh air for 30 minutes. After that, no, the CIO snapped, shocking me. We are not harming her. The stranger's voice sharpened, soft steel beneath velvet. You've already lost control of the narrative. You let her access unauthorized materials. You allowed emotional ties to cloud your judgment. She is my consultant, my responsibility, the CIO hissed. My responsibility. No, the stranger corrected calmly. She is a liability. The air in my chest tightened. Marcus Hale was never the threat. You miscalculated. She was the danger all along. She sees patterns, she connects dots, and she doesn't scare easily. My pulse pounded. Which means, the man said, she cannot walk out with what she knows. The CIO lowered his voice to a desperate whisper. There must be another way. Footsteps shifted. Someone leaned closer to the vault door. You're too emotional about this. She's exposed our operation. You exposed your operation, the CIO shot back. And suddenly, everything crystallized. The CIO wasn't protecting himself. He wasn't even the mastermind. He was trying, failing, to protect me from someone above him, someone more powerful, more connected, more dangerous than I imagined. The stranger's voice floated through the steel with eerie patience. You will step aside. I'll handle Miss Landry. The hairs on my neck rose. The CIO's reply was sharp, frantic. If you touch her, you'll what? The stranger asked softly. You've lost your leverage. My breath hitched. Marcus was right. This wasn't about me stumbling into their secrets. This was about me becoming the threat worth neutralizing. A new sound joined the conversation, a mechanical whir. Someone was overriding the vault's emergency filter, shutting it down manually. The CIO panicked. Stop! That will suffocate her. The stranger sighed, bored. The vault must remain uncontaminated. Contaminated, meaning me. That is not protocol, the CIO shouted. You're going to kill her. Of course I am, the stranger said smoothly. This was decided the moment she opened that box. The CIO's voice cracked. She doesn't deserve this. She deserves whatever protects this company. My lungs constricted, not from lack of air, but from the dread sinking into my ribcage. Footsteps shifted again. Then a fist pounded against the steel. Not the CIO. He wouldn't be desperate. This was someone heavier, faster, frantic. Open the door, a voice boomed. Marcus. My heart nearly broke. Open it, he shouted again, voice cracking. You can't leave her in there. The stranger laughed lightly. Ha, the disgraced employee. Adorable loyalty. Move, Marcus growled. I swear. You're in no position to threaten anyone, the stranger cut in. Something crashed against the vault. Fists? A shoulder? Marcus was trying to break through solid reinforced steel. Madeline, he yelled. Madeline, can you hear me? I pressed my palm to the door. I'm here. A soft, muffled cry broke from him. Hold on, okay? Hold on. He cannot save her, the stranger said. Then footsteps shifted again, and a blunt thud rang out. A body hitting the floor. Marcus. Get him out of here, the stranger ordered calmly. The CIO protested weakly. He hasn't done anything. Remove him. Footsteps dragged Marcus away. His voice, faint but fighting, echoed down the hallway. Madeline, listen to me. Don't let them... Then silence. Pure, suffocating silence. The stranger exhaled once, content. The mechanical hum grew louder outside, the final stage of the override. The air in the vault thinned. My breath shortened. The man leaned close, his voice inches from the steel. "You should have left this to us, Miss Landry, but as you chose otherwise," he tapped once on the door, "this is where your ambition ends." My lungs tightened painfully. The emergency light flickered. The air grew stale. I was running out of oxygen, but as black spots formed in my vision, my hand brushed something cold, metal, ridged, familiar. The E6 box, still half open, still full of suppressed evidence, still the key to everything. And in the darkness, as consciousness thinned, a single thought burned through the fear. If they wanted me gone this badly, the truth in this box was powerful enough to save not just me, but everyone they'd buried. My fingers closed around the top file, and just before the world tilted and my knees buckled, a violent explosion shook the vault door. Someone was trying to break in, not to imprison me, to save me. The explosion rattled the vault so violently the emergency strip light slipped from my hand and clattered across the floor. The air had thinned so much that even fear felt muted, like it was smothered under wool. My vision blurred, tunneling, darkness creeping in from the edges. Another blast slammed into the vault door, this one harder. I stumbled backward, clutching the file against my chest like a lifeline. Dust shook from the ceiling. Something metallic groaned under pressure. Then, "Madeline! Madeline, hang on!" Marcus's voice, half broken, half feral. Then another voice, unexpected yet steady. "Move! I said move!" Officer Daniels, the internal compliance security officer, someone I didn't fully trust, but who apparently had chosen a side that wasn't the executive's. Metal screeched as a tool, maybe a hydraulic spreader, maybe something improvised, jammed into the vault lock. Someone was forcing the override manually. "Again!" Daniels barked. "Push!" A crack echoed through the steel. The vault didn't open, but it shifted. The tiniest give, but enough to let a thread of fresh air slip through, enough for oxygen to sting my lungs with painful clarity. I sucked in a breath, sharp and trembling. Another blow hit the exterior. I crawled toward the door on shaking hands, the file still pressed against me, pages crumpling under my grip. My head throbbed, my limbs heavy, but survival dragged me forward. The stranger's voice, calm, cold, cut through the pounding. "Step away from the door. She's already compromised." Daniel snarled, "Shut up before I put you through this wall." "You don't understand," the stranger said coolly. "She knows too much." Marcus screamed, "She's my wife!" A beat of stunned silence. Then the stranger let out the softest laugh. "Ah, loyalty, how inconvenient." Another mechanical alarm buzzed from above. The vault's air supply system was trying to reboot, the forced override from outside fighting the internal lock protocols. I pushed myself upward, leaning against a shelving unit to stay on my feet. "I'm here!" I yelled, though my voice cracked under weakness. "I'm here!" "Again!" Daniel shouted. Metal shrieked. The vault door jolted. Suddenly, a sliver of light sliced through the dark as the seal broke half an inch. A hand, Marcus's, shoved through the gap, fingers reaching for me desperately. "Madeline, take my hand!" I stumbled toward him, grasping his wrist with every ounce of strength I had left. The warmth of his grip sent a bolt of life through me, steady, anchoring, real. But before the gap could widen, before I could squeeze through, a shadow moved behind Marcus. The stranger. Tall, expensive suit, quiet dominance. He grabbed Marcus by the back of his collar and yanked him away from the door with a brutal jerk. Marcus gasped, stumbling. "Let me go!" "If you interfere, you join her," the stranger snapped. I lunged forward. "Leave him alone!" "You're in no position to demand anything," the stranger replied coldly. "You've made this far worse than it needed to be." Daniels shouted from the side, "Get your hands off him!" A scuffle broke out. Something slammed into the wall. Someone grunted in pain. I couldn't see clearly, only shadows, chaos, shapes thrashing in the thin line of light through the vault crack. Then the stranger's voice tore through it all. "Enough!" Everything stilled. His shadow leaned toward the door. "Miss Landry, you were warned. This company protects itself, and anyone who threatens its foundation is removed quietly." My heart pounded. He continued, "We gave you chances. We even tried to spare you. But now," a heavy metal click sounded. He'd drawn a weapon. Marcus screamed, "No!" Chaos erupted. Daniels tackled someone. I heard bodies hit the ground, grunts, a struggle, a shot fired. The vault door jumped from the vibration. My blood iced. "Marcus!" I cried. "Madeline, stay back!" he shouted. Then, unbelievably, the vault door shifted again. 3 inches, 4, enough for a hand, enough for an arm. Daniels roared, "Get her out! I'm trying!" The door screeched loudly as competing forces wrestled it open and shut. The stranger pushed, Daniels and Marcus pulled. I wedged my shoulder through the gap, ignoring the sting of metal scraping my skin. The strangers gnarled. "You cannot let her leave with that evidence." And suddenly his face appeared, just a glimpse through the gap. Eyes cold, smile thin, no fear of consequences. He lunged for the box in my arm. Marcus saw him, and something inside my ex-husband snapped. With a roar, he slammed his weight into the door from the outside, knocking the stranger off balance. The opening widened 2 more inches. Enough. Marcus shouted, "Go, Madeline, now!" I forced myself through the gap, collapsing into the hallway as Daniels dragged me fully out. My blazer tore, my knees hit the floor hard, but I didn't let go of the file. The stranger lunged, but Daniels shoved him back, slamming the panic bar and sealing the vault door from the outside this time. The stranger pounded on the steel, furious. "You don't know what you've done." Daniels leaned close to the sealed vault, voice low and deadly. "Actually, we do." Marcus fell beside me, panting, shaking, his shirt half torn from the struggle. He grabbed my shoulders. "Are you hurt? Madeline, answer me. Are you hurt?" I shook my head, breath trembling. "No, I'm okay. Marcus, thank you." Emotion flashed across his face, raw, unfiltered. "We have to go," Daniel said urgently. "Now, there are more of them, and once they realize she escaped..." His voice dropped. "They'll come in ways none of us are ready for." "Where do we go?" Marcus demanded. Daniels paused, and for the first time, fear flickered across his face. "To the only person who can expose all of this." "Who?" I asked. Daniels looked directly at me. "You." My breath caught. Then his next words sliced straight through me. "And they're already on their way to Maya." For a moment, the hallway spun around me. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered, blurring into streaks as Daniel's words punched straight through my spine. "They're already on their way to Maya." "No, no, no, no!" The words ripped from my throat without breath or restraint. My pulse flammed against my ribs like it could break through bone. Marcus stepped in front of me. "Madeline, listen, we can get to her before they do." Daniel shook his head. "Not if we don't move now. They've already initiated containment, and if the stranger mobilized security..." "He's not security," Marcus cut in sharply. "He's something else." Daniels didn't argue, which scared me more than his threats ever could. My hand tightened around the file against my chest. E6, stuffed with evidence that could topple careers, burn entire departments, and expose a rot that had threaded itself through this company for years. But none of that mattered. Not if they reached my daughter. I stood. My knees trembled, but my voice found steel. "We're leaving now." Daniels nodded. "Emergency exit stairwell, basement level. There's a service car that isn't registered to the company. It'll get us out." Marcus hovered beside me, eyes full of panic, but also something unfamiliar, devotion, and fear for me, not just himself. We moved quickly. No running, that would draw attention, but our steps were sharp, coordinated, silent. Daniels led, badge in hand, scanning us through restricted corridors. My mind ran faster than my feet. How did they know about Maya? Did they follow me before, track my address, tap my phone? Each possibility burned like acid. We turned a corner and froze. Two men in dark suits stood outside the elevator. Not employees, not security. Their posture was too still, too controlled, too predatory. When their eyes met mine, their faces didn't change. Not surprise, not concern. Recognition. Daniels hissed, "Back, back!" We pivoted instantly. The men stepped forward in perfect unison. Marcus grabbed my hand. "This way!" We sprinted down the corridor as the men gave chase, quiet, fast, terrifyingly efficient. Daniel swiped his badge at a side door, shoving it open. "Through here! Move!" We barreled into a darkened stairwell. The door slammed behind us, echoing up the concrete shaft. Down, down, down. Each step felt like a countdown between me and losing my child forever. Daniels reached the basement door first and stopped, pressing his ear against the metal. "They're splitting up," he whispered. "One's heading outside, one's heading to the garage." "They're closing in," Marcus breathed. My chest tightened. "We don't have time!" Daniels looked at me with a seriousness that felt like a verdict. "When we hit the garage, we need to be prepared for confrontation." "I don't care," I said. "I just need my daughter safe." He nodded once and opened the door. The basement garage was dim, echoing with distant mechanical hums. A black vehicle idled near a concrete pillar, Daniel's unmarked car. "There," he said, pointing. We moved quickly but cautiously. 20 feet, 15, 10. Then a shadow detached itself from behind a support beam. A man stepped out, tall, clean-cut, expressionless. The stranger. Not the CIO, not the executives, him. The voice from the phone, the voice outside the vault, the voice that said my ambition would end tonight. He smiled slightly. "Miss Landry, you've caused quite an evening." Daniels raised a defensive stance. "Stay where you are." But the stranger didn't stop. "You weren't meant to see the vault. You weren't meant to access E6. You weren't meant to survive the vault, actually." Marcus snarled, "Touch her and I swear." The stranger lifted a small black device, smooth, featureless, familiar. A remote. "Marcus, run!" He clicked it. A deep boom echoed from above, the vault exploding inward, destroying evidence, destroying the room, destroying any trace of what I'd uncovered. But not the folder in my hand. His eyes locked onto it. "There it is," he said calmly. "Give it to me, and this ends cleanly." "Cleanly for who?" I spat. "For you and your daughter." He said it too casually, too comfortably, as if he truly believed fear would fold me like paper. But he didn't know me. He didn't know the woman he thought he could corner into silence. I stepped forward, shoulders squared. "Let me be very clear. If you touch Maya, if you even look for her, every single name in this file will be on the front page of tomorrow's news." He laughed gently. "You won't live long enough to leak anything." Daniels moved first. A blur of movement, a shout, a tackle. Marcus grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the car. The stranger fought like a shadow, efficient, silent, deadly. He elbowed Daniels hard, sending him crashing against the concrete. Marcus lunged at him, but the stranger dodged, knocking Marcus to his knees. He reached for me, fast, too fast. But he didn't expect me to fight back. I slammed the metal box, E6's box, straight into his wrist. The remote clattered to the floor. He grunted, surprised for the first time since I met him. Marcus, blood on his lip, surged up and grabbed him by the shoulders, shoving him toward Daniels, who recovered enough to pin the stranger to the pillar. "Go!" Daniels roared. Marcus dragged me toward the car. We jumped in, slamming the doors shut just as the stranger broke free again. Daniels fired up the engine. "Buckle up!" he shouted. The tires screeched. The car shot forward. The stranger shrank in the rearview mirror, but his smile lingered, with the certainty of a man who wasn't finished. We didn't speak during the drive, didn't breathe, didn't blink, until we pulled into my neighborhood and saw the police. 3 cruisers, lights spinning like sirens were screaming at the sky. I bolted out of the car before it fully stopped. "Maya!" Marcus grabbed my arm. "Madeline, wait!" But I saw her, standing on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, a female officer crouched beside her. Safe. I ran, tears spilling before I realized they'd begun. Maya threw herself into my arms. "Mommy!" she cried. I held her tighter than breath itself. "I'm here. I'm right here." "You okay?" Marcus whispered behind me. I nodded, sobbing into Maya's hair. "Yes, we're okay." Daniels approached slowly. "We received an anonymous tip, said your daughter was in danger. We dispatched units immediately." My breath caught. "Anonymous?" I whispered. He nodded. And then I knew. Someone inside the company had protected me. Someone had saved my daughter. The CIO. Not innocent, not clean, not a hero, but someone with a conscience trapped inside a corrupted system. The next day, I turned over the E6 file to federal authorities. By weekend, the stranger vanished. No record, no title, no trace. The CIO resigned and entered federal protection. The COO and CFO were indicted. Marcus was cleared of major wrongdoing. And I was publicly recognized for integrity under fire. Not revenge, not triumph, clarity. Walking out of that federal building, Maya's small hand clasped in my hand, I felt something new settle inside me, something heavier than pride and lighter than fear. Power, not the kind built on threats or influence, the kind built on truth. And as cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, I looked at the world, not the world Marcus said I didn't belong in, but the world I walked into on my own terms, and whispered to myself, excellence, integrity, timing, the only tools I ever needed. If you learned something new from my life story, please like this video, subscribe to join our community for more stories like mine, and comment down below where you're watching this video from. I'd truly love to know.